News correspondent being interviewed live on Sky News where her son walks into the room and negotiates for 2 biscuits. It's quite funny to watch, but it points to a deeper underlying struggle that many of us have faced over the last few months. It induces feelings of guilt as we feel we aren't able to give our kids or our jobs the attention they both require. Perhaps a stress point for you has been related to family you don't live with. Families are often a stress point at the best of time. Perhaps you have elderly relatives who you can't see. You feel disconnected from them and helpless. You want to help out, but you don't know what to do. Now, sure, you can order some shopping and make sure they have the supplies they need. Maybe you've got grandchildren or nephews and nieces that you're longing to see, but you haven't been able to. Or perhaps you have now been able to see them in person, but you can't hug them. Perhaps uncertainty around work has been a stress point for you. It's been a roller coaster or a corona coaster, as someone described it to me earlier this week. Perhaps uncertainty around work has been a stress point for you. It's been a roller coaster or a corona coaster, as someone described it to me earlier this week. A few months ago, many of us were uncertain of the impact this would have on our jobs. We weren't sure how we would work or if we would work. Will we still have a job to come back to after this is all over? Now, many of us are now going back to work. We might have been working from home all this time, but now we're being asked to go back into our place of work. That can be a really stressful experience. Any situation where we're unsure about what will happen brings a degree of stress. We've all had our fair share of that this year. So how do we feel refreshed in the midst of a Google it? My Google and YouTube history is full of searches for things like this. How do you get live streaming to work? How do you play golf better? What is an expanded noun phrase? How many of you have had to Google something you didn't understand when trying to homeschool your kids? Now, as good as Google and YouTube are for finding help and answers to some of our questions, it can't answer the big questions we have. Sometimes we need a source greater than Google. Having said that, you don't have to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he is God himself, to listen to what he has to say and to apply it to your life. The words of Jesus are important to me. I believe that Jesus is more than a person in history. I believe that he is fully God and fully man. I believe there's more to Jesus than I can possibly begin to understand. And my experience is that my life has a deeper sense of purpose and value when I seek to apply the things he said. My experience of following Jesus is that he makes life better and he makes me better at life. But you don't have to believe what I believe to benefit from the things Jesus said. You can try it for yourself and see what happens. So let's get back to our question. How do I feel refreshed in a world that is stressing me out? Where are the tensions you're facing in life at this moment? What are the things that are stressing you out? If you're watching this live, then share them in the chat or the comments. Let us know the things that are stressing you out at the moment. We'd love to be able to pray for you, and you can pray for one another also. I'm sure many of you have felt the strain of having to juggle looking after the kids whilst also working from home. Have you had a stressful moment when you were on a work call only to be interrupted by your kids asking for something? Did you see the Sky News correspondent being interviewed live on Sky News where her son walks into the room and negotiates for 2 biscuits? It's quite funny to watch, but it points to a deeper underlying struggle that many of us have faced over the last few months. It induces feelings of guilt as we feel we aren't able to give our kids or our jobs the attention they both require. Perhaps a stress point for you has been related to family you don't live with. Families are often a stress point at the best of time. Perhaps you have elderly relatives who you can't see. You feel disconnected from them and helpless. You want to help out, but you don't know what to do. Now, sure, you can order some shopping and make sure they have the supplies they need, but you can't go and give them a hug. You can't ease their fears, and you can't ensure they will stay completely safe during this time. Perhaps the easing of lockdown has created more stress and uncertainty for you around this. You can go and visit them, but you're not sure if this will make them feel worse. Are you putting them at greater risk? Maybe you've got grandchildren or nephews and nieces that you're longing to see, but you haven't been able to. Or perhaps you have now been able to see them in person, but you can't hug them. Perhaps uncertainty around work has been a stress point for you. It's been a roller coaster or a corona coaster, as someone described it to me earlier this week. Perhaps uncertainty around work has been a stress point for you. It's been a roller coaster or a corona coaster, as someone described it to me earlier this week. A few months ago, many of us were uncertain of the impact this would have on our jobs. We weren't sure how we would work or if we would work. Will we still have a job to come back to after this is all over? Now, many of us are now going back to work. We might have been working from home all this time, but now we're being asked to go back into our place of work. That can be a really stressful experience. Any situation where we're unsure about what will happen brings a degree of stress. We've all had our fair share of that this year. So how do we feel refreshed in the midst of a world that is making us stressed out? What can Jesus possibly say into this situation that will help us? Now, the Bible talks a lot about stress, worry, and anxiety. However, it can be really easy to misinterpret what it says. There's a guy called Paul who wrote lots of the letters in the New Testament. Paul understands what it's like to feel stressed. He was shipwrecked, he was persecuted and arrested. He had times when it was all going well and times when everything seemed to be falling apart around him. In one of his letters, Paul writes this: "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." Statements like this can be helpful or harmful. It can be easy for us to interpret these words that are supposed to be a blessing as another burden. We can read them as a command that we're failing to obey, which creates more anxiety. These words can serve as a reminder that we can bring our stress and our worry to God, but they can also make us feel worse. If you're feeling anxious, being told to not be anxious doesn't help. It can be really difficult to know how best to help someone who is feeling anxious, who is caught up in worry and stress. How many times have you told someone to calm down who is not calm? It seems a perfectly rational and logical thing to say from your perspective. Telling someone who's anxious to not be anxious is like telling someone who is bleeding to not bleed. So what do? How do we feel refreshed in a world that is stressing us out? Didn't Jesus say the same thing as Paul? Didn't Jesus tell us not to worry? Well, sort of. Matthew records a time for us where Jesus was speaking to a large crowd of people. He was talking about many things relating to everyday life. At one point, Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear." Now, the context for what Jesus is talking about here is not worrying about money or food or clothing. He is talking about not making what we have to be the central focus of our lives. Jesus is saying in the verses before this that we shouldn't store up for ourselves treasures on earth. He is saying that the purpose of life is not found in how much stuff you can acquire. Because when we do this, it just leads to us feeling empty, unsatisfied, and worried. Jesus is telling us that there's more to life than what we have. Have you noticed how the more you have, the more you worry about what you don't have? Now, this is a helpful reminder, but if you're worrying about what you have or don't have, being told to simply not worry isn't going to make a difference. You will just add worrying about not worrying to the list of things you are worrying about. What's that going to do to your stress levels? Jesus isn't talking about how to handle stress here. He's talking about not letting your life be governed by the pursuit of wealth. If we fast forward a couple of chapters, we come across something else that Jesus said. These words are some of the most precious words to me that I've read in the Bible. They are words that have drastically shaped and influenced my life. They are words I carry with me close to my heart. They are words that speak life into my soul. This is what Jesus says: "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This is an invitation, it's not a command. Jesus starts off by giving the invitation and then sharing the result of the invitation. He then goes on to give some instruction on how to accept the invitation. Let's take another look. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." That's the invitation. If that's you, Jesus invites you to come to him. He shows us how we actually do this later. Now, are you weary and burdened? Are you struggling under the weight of life at the moment? Is all the stress and uncertainty taking its toll on you? Do you feel exhausted, worn out? Do you feel like you want to throw in the towel? If you are wearied, burdened, anxious, stressed, or worried, Jesus invites you to come to him. And what does he promise us when we come to him? He will give us rest. I need that. I'm exhausted from life at the moment. The last few months have been some of the most challenging I've ever faced in what I do. When you add the stress of work into the stress of other parts of life, it's no wonder we are wearied and burdened and need a rest. Rest is an important part of life. We need to have healthy rhythms of work and rest. Jesus talks a lot about this and models it for us. The problem for many of us is that we work, we get tired, we take a break, and we go again. Holidays and time off become something we long for, striving to get to our next break before we break. We rest, recharge, and we go again, lurching from one holiday to the next. Now, Jesus isn't actually talking about that here. He's not talking about rhythms of work and rest in this context. Jesus isn't offering you a holiday. He's not taking over from Thomas Cook. Jesus' invitation to come to him and find rest is an invitation for us in the midst of the stress. He's offering us rest in the midst of the crisis. He is wanting to help us keep going when we have to keep going. The rest Jesus is talking about here is not the rest you get when you withdraw, when you retreat, when you stop. The rest Jesus is offering you is the ability to find calm, peace, refreshment in the middle of the chaos. Do you want that? Do you need that? I'm sure many of us would love nothing better than to be able to drop everything and take a week off. But most of us can't do that. And even if we could, we can't keep doing it. You might have some time off booked this summer, but as soon as you get back, you'll be back into the normal stress and worry. Jesus is offering something different than a break from the stress. He's offering you the ability to find rest, to be refreshed in the midst of the chaos. Jesus invites you to come to him, and as you come to him, you will find rest. Rest that goes deeper than a lie-in. Rest that goes deeper than a day off or a holiday. So how do we do this? How do we come to Jesus? I know how to go on holiday. I know where to go if I want to relax on the beach or sit on a bench in the park. I know where to go if I want to hang out with a friend. How do I come to Jesus in a way that results in this rest and refreshment? Well, Jesus tells us, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Now, we might not fully understand what Jesus means here. Jesus is using terminology that his original listeners would understand. A yoke is a piece of equipment used in agriculture. It's something that goes across the shoulders of an ox for it to be harnessed to another animal or to pull plowing equipment. A yoke symbolizes work, hard work. Now, on face value, this doesn't make sense. Jesus is inviting us to come to him to find rest, and the way we do that is by working. The point is, we all have a yoke on our shoulders. For many of us, it's one we put there. For others, it's one put there by other people. Often it's expectation. We allow ourselves to be burdened by the weight of expectation, expectations we have for ourselves or expectations others have for us. Every aspect of our lives comes with these expectations: work, home, school, church, family, friends. They pile up on top of each other, and soon we're buckling under their weight. For many of us, we carry around a huge weight of expectation. We want to be the best we can be, and we want people to think the best about us. That's exhausting after a while. Social media often doesn't help here. We look at what others are doing, comparing ourselves to the photoshopped versions of themselves that they post for the world to see. We look at the reality of our lives and think they don't match the snapshot that others post of theirs. We try to create ourselves in the image of Instagram, looking for one more like. We forget that we're created in the image of God, that the Creator likes us. We allow ourselves to worry about what people we don't even know or perhaps even like think about us. We compare what we're doing with what they're doing. The people who seem to have it all together, the ones who've been doing craft and baking and adventures with their kids. A good day for them seems to be composing a family song, learning a new language, and teaching their 3-year-old A-level calculus. You were just hoping to be able to go to the toilet without being interrupted. This comparison is an extra weight that we have to carry around with us. Then you throw in something unexpected, something like a worldwide pandemic that brings with it a bunch of added stress and uncertainty. This gets piled up on top of the yoke that we are already struggling to carry, and before you know it, we are crushed underneath, burnt out, exhausted, broken. Jesus comes to us and says, take it off. That yoke is not designed for you. I have one that fits you perfectly. Take my yoke, learn from me, As Jesus invites us to come to him, he invites us to walk with him, to get in step with him, to look to him and learn from him, to live in him, allowing him to be the filter through which we live and breathe. That all that I am and all that I do flows through him. My values, my priorities, what I do with my time, what I do with my money, how I treat people around me, the expectations I allow to be placed on me. All of that is found in the yoke we carry. Jesus says, take my yoke, carry this, follow me. This is a yoke that comes with healthy rhythms of work and rest. Jesus wants you to work hard. He doesn't want you to hardly work, but he wants you to do it in a way that is healthy and sustainable. So why should we take Jesus' yoke instead of ours or someone else's? Well, Jesus tells us, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The expectations and burden I put on myself and allow others to put on me are often not gentle or humble, and they certainly do not result in rest. But that isn't the same with Jesus. I see a pattern in my life when I do this, when I come to him, when I allow myself to shed the yoke I've picked up or have allowed to be placed on me by others. When I replace that with his, I feel lighter. When I stop trying to live life my way, for me, with me at the center. When I look to Jesus, when I seek to follow him and live in step with him, I feel refreshed. Even though I find myself in the midst of chaos, when I walk in step with Jesus, I find that the other aspects of my life tend to fall into balance. I rest more. I take time off without feeling guilty because I know I haven't got anything to prove. I look after myself better. I eat better and I sleep better. I take better care of the people around me, the people I love. I respond to them better, putting their needs above my own. But for some reason, I quickly default back to the other way. For some reason, I have a tendency to pick up the old heavy yoke. I've yet to find a way to stop me doing this. So each day I come to Jesus afresh, consciously allowing myself to carry the yoke he has for me. And sometimes I have to be even more intentional than this. When life hits those extra stressful times, I can come to Jesus and simply say, help. It's almost like I pass him all the heavy stuff I'm carrying. Sometimes I even visualize it like that. I take the stress and the anxiety and the worry off my shoulders and I give it to him to carry. Now that might sound strange if you've never done something like this. It might sound strange if you don't believe that Jesus is more than just a person from history. But Jesus invites you to come to him to find rest. So why don't we do that now? Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, just stop. Allow yourself to become aware of the yoke you're carrying. Allow yourself to acknowledge the weight you're under. Allow yourself to hear those words that Jesus speaks over you. Come to me if you are wearied and burdened. And if that is you, come to him. Bring all that is making you feel weary and burdened. Bring your stress, your worry, your anxiety, and ask him for help. Name what it is that you want him to help you with. Jesus, help me. And as you ask him for help, allow him to prompt and guide you. You might instinctively know what you need to do or what you need to let go of. You may become aware of the imbalance of priorities in your life. You might begin to see the places where you've put yourself at the center. Jesus' invitation to come to him is an invitation to follow him, to get in step with him. That's the yoke he's offering you to carry. If you don't know what that looks like, then simply start by each day asking Jesus to help you. And go about your day with your eyes open, looking for him to guide you. And he will. It might take time, but he will. If you're new to this, if you're not sure where to begin in following Jesus, just head over to fbcnext.com/mynextstep and you can find some tips and resources to help you. How do I feel refreshed in a world that is stressing me out? By accepting Jesus' invitation to come to him. Bring him your stress, your anxiety, your worry. Take off the yoke you are carrying and pick up the one he has for you. Start each day by asking Jesus to help you walk in step with him today. And end it by reflecting on what has happened, looking at the places where you were in step with Jesus and the places where you picked up your old yoke. Ask Jesus to help you in these areas tomorrow and go again. Allow Jesus to refresh you each day, each moment in the midst of a world that is designed to stress you out.
There is healing in the power of the Lord Most High. There is courage in the shadow of His wings. There is peace unending over all my life. There is freedom that washes over me. And I find all I need here in your presence, Lord. I open up my soul and you fill me up with all I need here in your presence, Lord. Where blessings overflow, there's always abundantly more. There is rest in the goodness of the Lord my God. There is treasure in the kindness of my King. There is comfort in knowing your unfailing love. My provider, you set my spirit free. I find all I need here in your presence, Lord. I open up my soul and you fill me up with all I need here in your presence, Lord. Where blessings overflow, there's always abundantly more. More than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. It's more than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. It's more than I could ask or seek, more than I could fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined. I find all I need here in your presence, Lord. I open up my soul and you fill me up with all I need here in your presence, Lord. Where blessings overflow, there's always abundantly more. More than I can ask or see, more than I can fathom. God, your love for me is better than I imagined.
Father God, we know we exist in testing times. Life can be tough, stressful, uncertain. But please let us lean into the invitation to find rest and refreshment in you, Jesus. Let us find a way to not make material stuff the centre of our lives, but focus our lives on you. Lord, we ask we come to you weary and burdened, and learn to take your yoke upon us. Let us give up those expectations and stresses we put upon ourselves, and give us those moments of grace in our lives where we can just be in your presence, to rest, to restore ourselves. Please help us create sustainable rhythms in our lives, to come to you afresh each day, Lord. In your name, Father. Amen.